Here's me when I'm like fat and younger and I have titties.
Yeah, buddy. Lightweight, baby!
What's up, guys? I'm Josh and I Lift Things, and I'm here to talk about gynecomastia and my experience with it. Too long didn't watch. If you have gyno, you can get blood work done to see if a SERM can maybe help. But if not, your options are either learn to love yourself or get a roughly $5,000 surgery. So before I get into my personal experience, because I did have gyno for years, let me first explain what gynecomastia is, or gyno for short. Gyno is the growth of breast tissue in men. Specifically, a large gland forms and then a lot of fat surrounds it. Some men even get to the point of lactation, literally making breast milk. It can happen in one or both breasts and oftentimes goes away on its own, and is extremely different than pseudo-gynecomastia, which basically just means fake gynecomastia, which is when someone is overweight and they store a lot of fat in their breasts just through genetics. The slang term in the bodybuilding community, which happens to be a bit derogatory, is bitch tits. Yeah, I didn't feel good saying it, you didn't feel good hearing it. Let's move on. There are three main forms of gynecomastia, and there's two real ways that you typically get it. The three forms are caused by either estrogen, prolactin, or progesterone. These are hormones that have a lot to do in your body, and getting out of whack with them can cause some issues. The two main ways people end up getting it is typically through anabolic steroid abuse or through puberty. Now, the mechanisms are the same either way, but through puberty it's known as pubertal gynecomastia. The main reason people get pubertal gynecomastia is through estrogen. What essentially happens is, as your body starts to go through puberty and you start to produce more and more testosterone, your body wants to keep the ratio of testosterone estrogen roughly similar. So they will increase the production of aromatase, which is an enzyme that aromatizes testosterone, converting it into estrogen. All of a sudden, you have created a gland of breast tissue. Now, that is a very, very gross generalization of the entire issue at hand, but I'm trying to simplify this as much as possible, especially for a young kid who may be watching this and is going through it right now. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand that this is going to be a very hard thing to deal with as a young man. Everyone is super obsessed with their own looks, and walking around with some mommy milkers doesn't really help. This is exactly what happened to me. I remember I was about 11 years old and I woke up one morning and I had poofy nips. I was a skinny kid. I didn't have saggy breasts or anything like that. And when I got cold or started nipping, they were of normal size, but in general, they were quite large and poofy. I even freaked out and asked my older brother if I had like breast cancer, to which he kind of laughed at me. Anyways, they didn't go away. I remember making up lies to classmates about it, like changing in the locker room. I remember one kid was like, "Hey dude, what's up with your tits?" And I was like, "Oh dude, doing like up downs in football, I bruised them. The doctor said I bruised my nips. I didn't even know you could do that." Like, literally just making shit up because I'm so embarrassed about something I do not understand. Or like in the locker room, and this is a pro tip to any like young guy that's dealing with gynecomastia, I'd be like taking my shirt off, but like I would like nonchalantly, or at least what I thought was nonchalantly, like try to twist a nip, because that would make it like nip up like you were like it was cold out, and it would be a normal size. So when I take my shirt off, they look like normal nipples. So sad that like I even had to deal with that. Like, but yeah, it's what I did. Eventually I went to a doctor and they told me what it was. He told me to go to an endocrinologist, which is essentially a hormone doctor, to get my levels checked. At this point though, I was already like 13 or 14, so I was a grown man. Grown man's probably a bit of an overstatement. But I was well past the development of what I was at when I was 11. At this point, I was doing my own research, and so I figured out about SERMs, or selective androgen receptor modulators, the antithesis to a SARM that you've probably heard of, which would be a selective androgen receptor modulator. The one specifically I heard about was Nolvadex, and I heard that it could remove gynecomastia. So I got the blood work done, all of my levels are stable, and I bring it up to the doctor. I basically had to beg, because he knew but didn't probably have the heart to tell me, was that once you have actual like a gland formed, there's nothing that a SERM will do. It will not be helpful to you in any single way. Regardless, he gave it to me, which is potentially malpractice, because those SERMs can have some pretty brutal side effects depending on how long you take it for. But it didn't do jack shit for me, and I quit taking it upon my own volition once I did some more research and found this all out. So gland was formed, medication was useless, my only option was going to be surgery. So I'm now in high school and I found a hack for my gyno. I bought a bunch of Under Armour shirts, like the skin tight, kind of like this material of shirt. I cut the neck and I cut the arms off, so that way they're more like an undershirt, because I couldn't really afford to buy a bunch of like the actual nice undershirt versions, and I didn't want them to be visible underneath the t-shirt. So wearing this like compression shirt underneath regular clothes, people couldn't see it, and it kept my big old juicy tits out of harm's way. Turns out they sell specific things for this for people with gyno, but at that point I was past it. So at this point, I'm in high school, I'm hooking up with girls, and I'm never taking my shirt off, which always got weird questions. Dick out, tits in. It's a weird scenario. Oh, fuck, this is so cringy. I would change in the locker room and people would be confused about the Under Armour. And I would just tell them, oh, it's to help my posture. Who knows if they bought it? Kids are coming dumb, but like, it's whatever. Just act confident, I guess. And you know, this just sucks. I would never go to swimming pools. Couldn't play shit like strip pong at parties. I was a kid who played sports, was in great shape, was strong, but was so self-conscious I couldn't take my shirt off anywhere. Maybe that's why to this day I don't really care about training for aesthetics. To me, it's just not in my mind. I don't think about it. It's safe to say it has absolutely warped my perception of my body. Finally, I broke, and from working some odd jobs throughout my entire life, I was able to save up some cash, hoping to get a surgery. I got a hold of my doctor, who said that he went to school with the guy who ended up being a plastic surgeon. You need a plastic surgeon for this surgery. It's not just a regular operation. Who was a couple states away and did great work. So I drive multiple state lines over at the age of, roughly 16 or 17 in order to talk to this guy about a surgery. The surgeon thought I just needed liposuction. The gland probably wasn't that big. To be fair, I was much bigger at this time, probably about 225. So he probably assumed that I was just a fat guy with maybe pseudo-gynecomastia. So, he's a doctor, I'm just some dumb kid. So I cough up $5,000, and 3 months later, I still have poofy nipples. I was heartbroken. I thought I wasted all this time, all this money, all this time recovering, not being in the gym, not being able to play sports. For those that don't know, insurance will not cover a gynecomastia surgery except in like extreme cases. While mine felt extreme, the insurance company did not see it that way. Fast forward a couple of years and I'm diagnosed with Crohn's disease. I lose 80 plus pounds in about half a year. I'm shitting blood 10 times a day and I'm just kind of generally dying. So I'm now a super skinny skeleton but with poofy nips. Right back to what I was when I was 11 years old. So I turned 20 and I go back to the surgeon just to kind of see what my options are. When I'm there, he brings up how deathly I look because it was just a severe difference in just a couple years. And I kind of break down. It's kind of embarrassing to say, but I was sobbing to this grown man. I talked about how when I was big and bulked up, fat tits on me kind of at least made sense. But now that I'm a Skeletor, it's even more embarrassing to have these nipples. I brought up how he told me I just needed liposuction. I tried telling him that I needed gland excision, the removal of the gland that formed. And I don't know. It was a very emotional time. It was very awkward. And I left there in a very bad mood. Nothing was said. Nothing was agreed upon. I just pretty much got up and left. It's very dramatic of me. But at this point, to be fair, I was like unironically dying. So emotions were high, and this is something I was dealing with on top of all the stress of Crohn's for about 9 years. I remember I brought up how insurance will maybe now cover the surgery because I wasn't extremely overweight anymore. My BMI basically just said he needs some milk. That day, that poor surgeon was a therapist, and I feel extremely bad for that. It was very awkward and very cringy, and yeah, it was weird. I'm not great at processing my own emotions, and I just basically let a decade of anger fly on some poor doctor. So yeah, it's not great. But sure as shit, a few weeks later, I get a call from his receptionist, and they say that they want to do the surgery for free. I didn't know how to take this information. I felt super conflicted. I was angry about the surgery being for free because I've never been great with accepting like gifts or charity. And I really don't know. It was emotional. It was weird, but I was upset at the idea of it. But obviously, being not a complete moron, I accepted. Now, here's the funniest part of the entire story. Since they were doing it for free, they couldn't get an anesthesiologist. So instead, they gave me a bunch of benzodiazepines, which if you don't know are anti-anxiety meds, like Xanax and Valium. Little do they know, my family has based drug genetics. So it turns out I can eat those like candy. They prescribed me 4 pills. It was like 4 different types of benzos, just one of each. And I was supposed to take them an hour before I arrived. Now it's like a 3-4 hour drive for me. So I'd have someone else drive me and I just pop them on the way, have a fun little road trip. When I arrive, they give me some more. They check on me about 30 minutes later, and I'm wide awake. They give me 4 more. Same thing. So at this point, I have about 12 drugs in me and I'm just chilling like a villain. They come in one last time and say, hey man, your surgery is supposed to start basically like 2 hours ago, and like he has like paying customers coming, so you either need to fall asleep right now or we can't do the surgery. And I said, ask the surgeon if I can do it awake. The doctor hesitated but ultimately agreed. Oh man. So they lay me down on this like gurney. Is that even the term? I don't know. They lay me down on this little bed thing and they put this like sheet over my head, which freaks me the out. Anti-anxiety my ass. I am adrenaline up to 11. So I ask if they can remove the towel and they're like, well, you'll be watching your own surgery. And I asked the surgeon, I was like, hey, will that make you uncomfortable? Like, will that make you perform worse? He's like, nah, I don't really care. And I was like, okay, like, let the boy watch. So what happens next is kind of a daze. You know, at this point, I'm f***ed up, but there's no way I'm falling asleep. But I watched my entire surgery happen. I was shooting the shit with the doctors. At one point, he kind of went up really high up because he also did liposuction. This was an excision and liposuction. He went kind of high up and I was like, hey, chill out up there. Like whatever numbing shit you put in to not reach up there, like it hurt. And at one point, I even asked if I could put my finger in myself, to which they agreed. There was one surgeon and like 3 nurses, and they were all just appalled at how chill I was. Imagine just this fucked up kid who looks like a skeleton. They slap a glove on and they let me just go finger bang myself. It was the weirdest day of my goddamn life. It was such a bizarre time. So I'd shout out the doctor for helping me out, and list his name, but that whole scenario, like, might be illegal or some shit. But regardless, he's a down one, and respect to him. Thank you so much. So I got the surgery. Next is going to be a few months of recovery, and this recovery was extremely extended because I am a idiot. I was so excited about how I looked that I was flexing in the mirror. And in doing so, I ruptured my stitches. I blew them out. So somewhere in my community college apartment is just a ton of blood on a bathroom ground. Had to go to the ER to get it restitched. But at the ER, I caught the flu. So the very next day, I'm vomiting and shitting my life out. And I'm a very intense vomiter. I like convulse and donkey kick. And I blew my stitches out again. So I decided to go to the surgeon's office to actually have them resuture me appropriately. He decided to have a nurse redo them. She tells me that I have so much blood actually pooled up that I need to get it rubbed out. On the medical form, when I requested all of the release forms, because I wanted to show pictures of this video, they referred to it as milking me. So once again, I'm back with mommy milkers. It's kind of fucked up. And this was the most painful thing I've experienced in my life, except maybe my Crohn's cramps. I had bruising all the way down to my legs from blood pooling. And so she literally is like squeezing it out of me. I had they did lipo like here, 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 and here on each chest. And then they do the excision underneath the nipple. So I have like little like scars underneath my areola. And they are milking me out of each of these little holes, out of every one that I blew out the initial sutures on. And it was so painful. They then resutured me without any numbing whatsoever. And stitches. So they are, once they press on all this sensitive tissue, they just had liposuction done, a super brutal operation. It's so sensitive, it's so bruised. And then they start suturing me without anything to numb me. So I'm literally in my freshly milked surgery tits. They are stabbing me repeatedly. Terrible. The nurse even made a joke. She's like, you know, people who pay get, you know, they get some numbing shit. I'm like, yeah, haha. I'm a brokey. I get it. Insane. Like one of the worst days of my life that will stick with me forever, that in retrospect is a really funny story, but is just brutal. So here I am now, today, years later, titty free. Hopefully you enjoyed the Josh lore, but let's get to some progress pictures. I don't have the pictures up right now, actually, so I'm just gonna talk and maybe the pictures will line up. So like, here's me when I'm like fat and younger, and I have titties. Then they do lipo, and the lipo looks a little bit better, but I still have nips, like big old poofy suckable nips. And then here's me super skinny, still with nips. And like, yeah, that's like me, like really skinny. Like I'm like dying. Like hopefully I've talked long enough to show like how skinny I was. And then here's me without nips or tits while still skinny. And now like here's me bigger, but still without nips now. At this point, you wouldn't even know I had the surgery. My scars healed up extremely well. The only thing is my chest is a little bit uneven because he took more like fat out of an area. So when I'm like super lean, you can't tell, but when I'm bigger, it absolutely looks like I have a little bit of an uneven chest. But that is perfect. That is leaps and bounds better than anything I was dealing with before. I will never complain about that. The entire debacle was terrible. but it did give me a few things. It gave me a different way to view people. I am now extremely empathetic to people's struggles with their own body. It gives me a lot of empathy for those suffering from body dysmorphia, because I guarantee you, like, I thought my chest looked way worse than it actually was at the time. And I learned to never judge someone just for how they look. I guarantee you they didn't ask for it. Now, my advice to you, if you have gyno, make sure you're not just overweight. If you squeeze your breast, you may be able to feel like a hard lump behind your nipple. If so, it's probably gyno. There's a chance it could be something like a calcium deposit or some other type of growth or lump, but for the most part, if you are a young man going through puberty and you squeeze behind your nipples and you feel a lump, it's probably gynecomastia. If you find out early enough, go to your doctor, who will refer you to an endocrinologist. I cannot say that word for some reason right now, and they may give you a serum like Nolvadex or Raloxifene, and that may help cancel it. It may just go away by itself. But if you have a hard gland developed, it's probably too late for you. If you need to cover it in the meantime, twist your nipples in secret. As ridiculous as that sounds, it's so weird, and this will make it look normal enough for you to change or hop into a swimming pool, or to give you a little bit of peace of mind so you're not just mocked. For hiding it under clothes, wear a compression shirt. You can get one specifically to be hidden underneath clothes, or you can do what I did and buy some Under Armour shirts and then cut them up, which looks a little goofy, but it gets the job done and is a bit cheaper. If you need surgery, it's going to cost about $5,000, at least in the United States. It'll be about a 3-month recovery in total, depending on how extreme the lipo they had to do was. You could potentially get it covered by insurance if it is extremely painful, or if you lie and say it's extremely painful, and also bring up the mental anguish. Really hammer on that mental anguish. And finally, learn to love yourself. I've since met tons of confident people that had gynecomastia, and it always just blew my mind. No one ever commented on their appearance or cared, really. It's just something that I personally couldn't do. I was too mentally weak. Maybe that's even a bad way to phrase it. Maybe it's not weakness, but just insecurity in general. Learn to appreciate yourself. In the meantime, maybe save up for surgery. And guys, that is the video. Very long one. Hopefully at this point you understand a little bit more about me. You got some funny stories. You understand why gyno happens and how it happens. And you have some tips of dealing with it if you have it. If you like this style of content, you can hit the like button and the subscribe button. I post a new video every single Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. If you have any comments about gyno that you don't want to post publicly in a YouTube comment, even though you should, it really helps out the algorithm, and I respond to every single one of them. You can DM me on Discord or on Reddit or on any social media with DMs. You can find the links to all of those in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.